welcome back to another episode of the Wet Dreamz Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez. I'm a mental health counselor and a sex therapist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Hinman. I am also a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and certified sex therapist.
Nice. So today we're talking about libido again. I mean, I feel like we talk about it a lot, but specifically today, I think I wanted to focus on when guys have lower libido than their partners. I feel like, I don't know, anecdotally, I feel like it's happened more often than I remember it, but I have a fair amount of guys that say that their sex drive or their desire is lower than their partners, and I think this can pose a interesting like conundrum or whatever for our guys. Have you had clients that come in with specifically with that they feel like their sex drive is lower than their partners?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's the majority of times,
yeah,
but like I definitely have had clients with that. I have some clients now with that issue, and I think it creates a feeling of panic inside of them sometimes. They're like, what's wrong with me, you know? And so that drives them to counseling because they think something's wrong with them. So
right. And I think it's like from multiple avenues where they get these messages, whether that's from porn, of course. I mean, we're the porn people, that's what we talk about, but also just regular media, or even like, I think often partners of our guys will compare their sex life to different things or to their friends or something like that, and hearing like, well, this so and so they have sex, you know, every day or twice a day or whatever. Like, this is weird, you know. I think there's that comparison thing that happens, not just fake social media and all that, but sometimes real cases, you know.
Yep. Yeah, comparison is always it's always frustrating because we're comparing ourselves to the best that other people are presenting, right? They're like, think of social media, right? Like the picture that you see on social media and it looks like their perfect life, but you know, they took 1,000 pictures to get that one good one. So we're comparing the best 1% of somebody's life to our 99% bad life or whatever.
Right. It's never gonna compare.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I think it not only from social media, but like the movies, like I think males are acculturated from day one to think that we're supposed to want to have sex anytime anybody is willing, sometimes when they're not willing, and you know that that men never have to turn down sex, they never want to turn down sex. They're supposed to be always ready whenever somebody commands them to be ready to have sex, and so there's a lot of myths out there about sex and wanting sex and sexual desire.
Yeah. And I think it's like, you know, not all of them, but a lot of myths or untruths kind of will skirt that line. Like, so for example, the thought I had was like, I think a lot of times guys are more able to flip that switch in a lot of things they do, or, you know, I think guys tend to have more think about things more compartmentalized. So there is an ability to just switch it on, I think, a lot. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing that all the time, or that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that even if you're not feeling sexual. You know what I mean? Like, just because you have the ability to do it doesn't mean you should or want to in that moment. You know, I think that's where sometimes it's like balance or whatever, like a fine line. Because guys could do it. They could turn it on if they wanted to, you know.
Yeah, men are ready for sex generally much quicker than women are. But it doesn't mean they always want to, right?
Right.
And so, nor should they always want to.
Right.
Right. It's men have emotions too.
Yep. Well, and that causes the like, why don't I want to thing. I think that's, I mean, we can get into that too. We'll back up from there, but I think that's the emotional piece of it. But what are some, before we get there, what are some things that affect guys like sexual drive, healthy things, or, you know, what are some things that make that fluctuate in their lives in general?
lots of things.
All
Stress,
the things.
I think, all the things. I think stress is a big component.
Big one. Yeah.
The more stressed somebody is, the more stressed a male is, or a female, but the more stressed just a person is, the less sexual desire they're going to have. Generally, I mean, there's lots of exceptions for that.
Sure.
Humans are weird. They don't make good book chapters. So
right.
It's hard to say all the time, this is what happens.
Yeah.
But it's like stress, anxiety, depression. So a lot of mental health factors, a lot of medications can cut down on sexual desire. Antidepressants being one example of that, but there's others where it actually reduces sexual desire specifically because of the part of the brain that it affects to help with the depression. It also impacts sexual desire, right? So it makes the person not actually want to have sex. They don't have that desire.
Right.
So stress, anxiety, sleep would be another one.
Sleep, yeah.
Lack of sleep or lack of proper sleep or sleep hygiene. What I mean by sleep hygiene is like science is now telling us like sleeping in is not necessarily a thing. People are going to be upset about that. But like you should generally wake up at the same time every day and go to bed at the same time every day. Right. Even on the weekends or vacation, because your body is used to that, and disruption of that cycle can disrupt other things like sexual desire, for example.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There we go. So don't sleep in. Yikes. That's going to be the title of the episode. Don't sleep in. It's bad for you.
Bad for sex.
Bad for sex. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And a note on stress, I think one thing I notice is like, or one thing to think about, I guess, I don't know, whatever, is like, not all guys feel like sex is a stress relieving thing. It can be, and at times it can be, it's not all or nothing thing for the guy, but at times it's not, so I the thought I had, as you said, that was like, well, stress is, people might think, oh, stress is sex is stress relieving. But not necessarily always, some guys, it depends on the type of stress. It depends on, some guys want to be alone and do their own thing and truly feel like there's no responsibilities or no pressure on them to stress relieve. You know what I mean? So that's a, false assumption. I think a lot of people have, like, stress, like you can de-stress by having sex, but not always.
Yes. I think that sex can be a stress reliever, but it also can be a stress inducer. Like if your relationship with your partner is not in a good place, then having stressful sex can be more stressful, because you're not emotionally bonded to this person right now because you're in the middle of a fight or whatever, and so it can actually create more anxiety and stress in the person, because you have to be vulnerable with this person when you're not feeling safe being emotionally vulnerable. So
right. And also, like, if a guy is stressed, or the guys that we see are stressed, and then they have a low sexual desire, then that can be stressful to be like, oh, I should initiate with my partner, or we should be having sex. So like, I guess I should do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's the stressful part of initiating it, especially if they have lower desire. So now that's stressful. Maybe it's better when they get to the moment, and then it's fine. But there's that initiating piece that gives that initial barrier too. So that doesn't make us good for stress in that situation for that person. Yeah,
we could probably do a whole episode on initiating sex,
and we probably will. Look out for the initiating sex episode,
because that's like, I've had a lot of guys where they're not initiating sex very often, if at all, and then their partner complains about that, and the guy counters with, well, I'm afraid if I initiate sex that you're going to turn me down, which that's a whole thing that I talk to my clients about. Well, is that the end of the world if somebody says no, right? Like, it's, but they don't want to face that disappointment or anxiety from being turned down for sex, right? So they just wait for their partner to initiate it. And if the same person initiates sex every single time, that gets boring for that person. So then they bring it to therapy and we have to talk about it.
Exactly. I mean, and all of that is like fear of failure or something like that. I think that's the big thing. If there's even if partners have never turned them down, guys have talked about that, like the fear of being turned down, or the stress about trying to initiate. And then you kind of talk to them and you're like, has your partner ever turned you down? No, they've never turned me down, but like, they're still in there, but it's there. They might, I don't know, And I think that's a big one, the fear of failure thing. And initiating. Yeah, it's crazy. Definitely.
Yeah. Fear of rejection.
Yep. Definitely. For sure. And also that's the thing I was gonna, and also like, especially, I have clients that like maybe their sexual desire or their sexual desire was a bit more when they were younger at the beginning of the relationship, and it's changed over time due to circumstances or stress or work related stuff, whatever. Then their partner's kind of typically used to them being the initiator of the action more often than not. So sometimes it's hard to like switch that around of like, okay, well, you can initiate sometimes too. The partner can tend to get used to like, okay, this is the way it is. And now when it's not happening, it's like, what do we do now? They're like stuck because that's what it was always, at least early in the relationship, but then it's changed, It's just interesting.
Yeah. It's, it's the old battle between consistency and newness, So there's always that battle of, do I do the same thing every time and get the same results, or do I switch things up and have variety?
Right. So. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So what are some emotional impacts that kind of all that stuff can have on guys? There's this idea of like being less of a man because you're not initiating. Like, how does that affect our guys that we see?
I think some of the same mental health problems that I mentioned at the beginning, like the stress and anxiety and depression can impact sexual desire. It also, the lack of sexual desire can bring on those things, right? So it can make you depressed, can make you anxious, and it's a perpetuating problem. So then the more stressed and anxious you are, the less sexual desire you're going to have. The less sexual desire you're going to have, the more stressed and anxious you're going to be. So,
exactly.
It just feeds on itself and makes the problem worse.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Right. So then they're certainly not going to initiate. I think I had then that's when you see it goes years and years of like, oh, we haven't had sex in years because of that perpetuating like cycle, for sure.
I just realized you asked me about emotions and I talked about anxiety and stress, and those are not emotions. Right. So let me go back and answer that question.
There you go.
So like emotions, is sadness, right? It can make somebody sad that they don't have sexual desire because they're thinking that they should have sexual desire. So then they can be sad. I think sadness can, in this case, with this specific topic, sadness can definitely turn into frustration really quickly. And then men are experts at turning sadness and frustration into anger, right? So then they're going to get angry. I've heard some guys blame their partner for that, right? For their lack of sexual desire. It's your fault that I don't have sexual desire.
Right.
Which doesn't make any sense, but I've still heard guys do it. And so, right, I think that it can quickly turn into negative emotions, right? For generally, there might be somebody out there, but generally, I don't think when you realize that you have low sexual desire, nobody's happy about that,
right? Right. Unless it's a specific circumstance of like one, I don't know. Anyways,
unless you're a priest and you can't have sex, and then low sexual desire would be great.
Right. That's true. There you go. Perfect. But they're not coming into our offices. And I mean, I think, and then you add a layer that, of course, my brain, we always go back to porn too, but you add a layer of shame, for example, of like in your in your relationship, maybe your sexual desire is lower, but then when you're by yourself or when you're masturbating, porn or no porn, whatever, it seems to be fine, or you seem to be turned on in that area, and it's fine, you know, like add that to the mix of like shame, both for partner feeling bad because it's like, wait, what's wrong with me, but also the guy feeling bad of like, well, I don't want my wife, but I'm like fantasizing about other people too outside of that, you know. It's like an added layer.
And that's a big thing. You've touched on something there, because I think that there's a reason why when it's porn or like a random sexual hookup with a stranger that's not your partner, there's a reason why sexual desire is different there than it is in your relationship. And, you know, I think that monotony plays a role in that, right? Like, because I've had lots of guys talk to me about that very thing. Like, I'm like, well, why do you have sexual desire when you're looking at porn and you don't with your partner? And it's because of the variety, the newness, right? It's and also the pursuit. Like, if we're talking about hooking up with people and not porn, it's the like my clients always say it's the chase that really does it for them. It's not necessarily the sexual act. It's the getting somebody to talk to them and getting somebody to be interested in them and then want to have sex with them and then actually having sex. It's that pursuit. The sex is almost like an afterthought for that. Yeah,
definitely.
And so, you know, I'm not saying it's healthy and I'm not saying it's great, but there's a reason why there's a difference.
It's the same example you said about the social media. Like you're comparing 1% of what they show to 90% of your life. It's the same exact thing where you're comparing this limited experience. You don't know anything about the person. You don't know whether it's porn, whether it's someone online, whether it's an affair in person. You don't actually know about them. You haven't lived with them. You don't know that they leave their socks. That's usually a guy thing, but that they keep forgetting their phone. That's something my wife does a lot. But you know, losing their phone. You don't know that they kind of snore a lot when they're sleeping. You don't know whatever. Like, you know nothing about this person. So it's this sliver of what they are, plus your own things that you put onto them, or of like your own fantasy of like, oh, this person might be great. You're comparing that to like the 90% of your life, which is not, you know, you may have times of excitement, but it's life. You're living life. It's pretty stable. You know what I mean? So of course there's no comparison. It's totally different.
Yep. You're comparing like Disney World with mowing your lawn. It's like
that's a good one. Right.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, certainly. I gotta mow my lawn again, damn
it.
Exactly, right. So then of course it's like that desire changes, you know, but I get it, it's still like a hard pill to swallow, especially if it's that much of a disparity of like, okay, you're not having sex with me here, but you're doing all this other stuff. Like, it doesn't compute. And I get it. Like, it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't make sense. Like, I get that, you know, like where to go, you know?
Yeah. And whenever I'm talking to guys about low sexual desire, I always ask them about porn and masturbation, because another factor in that is like the more frequently you're looking at porn and masturbating, the less frequently you're probably going to want to have sex with the person, because you've spent all that sexual energy on masturbation, which, you know, that's great. Like, masturbation's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're in a sexual relationship with a human, they want to have sex with you too, but you've kind of wasted all that energy. And so that's going to cut down on your sexual desire.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, definitely. For sure. So how do we encourage our guys to have that conversation, or how do we have those conversations with couples or whatever about low sexual desire, all these feelings? Because I mean, definitely, and that's another factor as to why guys go to porn or to go to other places. They don't feel like they can talk about it. Not a fault of the partner. They don't have the tools, or they don't feel like they can talk about it. So it's important to have these conversations. What are some ways our guys can talk about this stuff, you know? It's kind of a big question, but
I think talking about it, right? It's
pretty simple.
But for so many times we like if we're thinking something or feeling something, then we don't talk about it. And then your partner's going to make up a reason, right? And they're almost always wrong.
Right. Right.
Because if they're like, oh, you know, my partner's not wanting to have sex with me as often. Well, why is that? Right. Well, then I must not be attractive. Then he must not be in love with me. He must have somebody else on the side. Like they're going to make up reasons because our brain doesn't like not having answers. And so it's going to create answers that are probably wrong.
Right.
And so that's why you should talk to your partner and say, I don't know why, but I'm going through this slump where I don't really want to have sex. So just even starting the conversation, you don't have to know all the answers to have a conversation with somebody. And I think that's part of the reason people don't have a conversation, because they don't know why and they don't know the answers.
Right. Because they can't present a solution of like, this is, or that's why people go straight to the physical part of it. Like, oh, okay, well, I'll just take testosterone or whatever. Like it must be a physical thing because that people want an answer. And I get it.
Right. And then that makes me think of like pills like Viagra or Cialis or something like that. And those pills only work if you already have sexual desire. Those pills do not create sexual desire. And you're not going to, taking that pill is not necessarily going to give you an erection if you don't have sexual desire already. So those pills are not the answer to all these problems.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. Yeah, and I think another thing that's come up recently some too is the thought I had is it's the same as any other of the issues, whether it be like suicide, whether it be like, you know, just sex in general. Like, I think there's this myth that like, just don't talk about it, like it's gonna make it worse or whatever. I think most things is the opposite, you know, like with that, like it might feel awkward or it might be like, oh, I'm gonna hurt her feelings or make it worse or whatever, but talking about it is not making it better. You know, and like you said, that your partner is putting in what they're thinking is happening anyways, so you might as well clear the air and say what's going on in your mind. And I've noticed this lately with some clients I've had, that like maybe they lose attractiveness to their partner, or maybe they never had attractiveness. I've had some of those. Have never been attracted to their partner, and both sides, I think, male, female. But you know, like this idea of like, well, this is what the type of women I used to go for, and then my partner is not that anymore. Or when early in our relationship, she was like, had a smoking body, blah blah blah, and now it's not, you know, like that's another thing. I feel like that's has come up recently. You know, I don't know if you've had clients like that or thoughts like that. I feel like it's similar, but it's kind of a 1A, like a side issue as well. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I have had clients with that, and it's, to me, that's like a slightly kind of different topic a little bit. Yep. I mean, it's similar. It's related.
Yes.
It's definitely under the sex therapy umbrella, right?
Yes,
so
right. And desire-ish umbrella, but it's a little different. Yeah.
So it's, you know, people's bodies change over time, right? Like it's that, like that's a given. And to me, like having somebody not have sexual desire because the person's body has changed over time, like I would question that, like I would ask the question, like, how much porn are you consuming? Because that's a very pornographized thought process of like everybody has to look like they're 18 when they're 65, right? Because,
right. Yeah.
And that's not reality. So, you know, you can't freeze your partner in time never have them age, right? Like this is a natural process, right? And so that's perhaps a more difficult thing to deal with in talk therapy,
right?
But not impossible.
Right? Exactly.
But also, like, I think ideally sexual desire is born out of a feeling of connection and emotional bonding and stuff like that. And so if you want to increase your sexual desire, you should increase those things, right?
Right.
Like do things that make you feel close to this person. Do things that make you feel like you can trust this person and open up to them and all that kind of stuff. Right. And sexual desire might increase.
Right. It's not just raw animalistic attraction, not even attraction, basically, or pheromones. This essentially at that point, I don't, you know what I mean? Like if you're cutting out all the romantic part of it, like you can't depend on just that, the, you know. And I think out of all of that, the theme that comes to mind is like our guys need to take ownership of their stuff, whether that's like, and that's one way maybe to talk about it with partners of like, hey, this is about me, you know, this is what's going on with me, whether that's physical, whether that's emotional, whether that's stress. Like, hey, this is how stress affects me. It makes me feel like I don't want to have sex, or when we fight, this is how it makes me feel about it and how it affects me. You know what I mean? I think that's one way to like really do it in a way that's not judgmental to their partners or whatever. I think just this whole theme of like, okay, taking ownership for your own sexuality, your own sexual desire, your own sexual drives, and then expressing that to your partner, you know, especially in the case of like someone that blames like, oh, it's your fault, you know, you've let yourself go or whatever. Like, no, what they do has anything to do with your sexual desire. What are you doing? You know, It's not their fault. Right. Like, what are you saying?
and I think like not being judgmental with each other, right? Like it's, but also included in that is talking about, this is what makes me happy. This is what turns me on. This is what I like. Yes. You know, couples don't talk about that either when they need to talk about it more. Because if you don't talk about it, then you're relying on your partner to read your mind, right? And guess. And then you get mad at them when they don't guess correctly. Well, why don't you just tell them what you want?
Right, exactly.
But again, I think it's fear of rejection, fear of failure, right? Like I think it goes back to all those things that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Like so certainly, you know, obviously talk therapy would be a big one. Like have a space where you can be non-judgmental and kind of an open space. But I like what you said about the, like, okay, let's shift the focus, not just sex. Let's switch it. Like, be more emotional, be more connected, do things that connective, be intentional every week to check in with each other, or to go on walks and like build that part of it, you know. Again, it's this just societally as guys, it's like, oh, it's just sex, or like you should want to have sex, but all guys desire that emotional component. All guys desire good sex, and good sex comes from emotional connection and that kind of being connected to your partner. So it's, everyone wants the same thing. Yep. You know, even if society says that guys don't want that.
Right. Well, and that's a common question I ask my clients is, what are you doing to build your relationship? Right. And if we're talking about sexual desire, that's a question I ask them. But even if they're coming for couples therapy for some other issue, I still ask them, you know, what are you doing to build your relationship? Because if they're not building their relationship, nothing remains static, right? Nothing remains consistent. And so if you're not building it, then you're destroying it, right? So, you know, yes, you have this problem that you're coming to couples therapy for, but also what are you doing to feed this relationship, to put energy into it? Otherwise it'll die.
Right, exactly, definitely. Sweet. So our guys aren't weird if they have lower sexual desire. Is that what we're saying?
Yep, it's more common than you think.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it happen more, or maybe people are more open about it. I don't know. It's interesting. Like I see it a fair amount these days. And again, it changes throughout. I mean, like your desire at 20 is going to be different than your desire at 30, your desire at 40, whatever, you know, or your desire after physical illness has come on, your desire after change in job, whatever, like kids, you know, empty nest, any stage, like it's just gonna be different. It's fine, you know.
Yep, it does. That what you said is absolutely correct. And then I'll add, like also, if you find yourself in a place where you have low sexual desire, that doesn't mean it's going to be permanent, right? Like that's another thing that humans do, is they think what I'm experiencing right now, I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. It's impossible for you to feel anyway for the rest of your life, even happy, right? Yep. Like it's just, we're not designed that way. So, but that's astounding to some people when I say that, like, you're not going to feel like this forever. You're not going to have low sexual desire forever. It changed to get here, so it could change again to go back, right? So
yeah, most times it's not a switch that changes, is over time usually. Yeah, for sure. Cool, sweet. Well, that's our episode. Hopefully the low desire guys, and I think most of our people that listen are female anyway, so hopefully they got something out of it.
Right.
Yeah, we'll definitely do some other episodes on that, and I'd love to do another episode on like the attraction thing. Is kind of something that's come up lately a lot, but we'll be back.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Check out our socials on Wet Dreamz Podcast with a Z on all socials, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.
The Wet Dreamz Podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.